Thank you for joining me back. The second video is talking about specific risk factors of middle-aged men in specific populations. In addition to general risk factors that may affect all middle-aged men, such as general aging in regards to health problems, just not being able to do what men were able to do in their earlier ages, such as mobility, exercise, things like that. There are also factors of belonging to a certain population that are risk factors as well. Within this age group, there are variants that show that certain populations commit suicide at a higher rate than others. These differences include race, sexual orientation, marital status, military status, and even the area lived in. The first specific population I want to talk about here is suicide risk among gay men. Gay men are at a higher risk of suicide. That is the conclusion of a recent study in Switzerland surveying a group of 762 men between the years of 2007 and 2011. In the study, 1 in 6 reported attempting suicide at some time in their lives. And of those that said that they attempted suicide at least once, 60 of those said that they attempted on multiple occasions, more than one time. During the study, depression and anxiety was prevalent, even among those that had not thought or attempted suicide. So, of the group of men that were surveyed, of the 762, 88% of all respondents reported suffering from depression at one time, and 60% expressed feeling anxiety as well. So, many of these men not only express feeling depression, but also anxiety on top of depression as well. That is something that the doctor addressed in the previous video, saying that mental health can be a significant cause or a risk for suicide. It's not always the case that it's always related to mental health, but it is a significant risk factor. The average age of this participants was 37 years old, but many respondents were even older. So this is taking into account adult men in young adulthood and also adult men in middle adulthood. But the average comes out to 37, which is sort of the beginning stage or the beginning years of middle adulthood. Lack of personal acceptance was one of the major factors given for suicidal ideation, a reason that was given from the widest age range, meaning that this particular problem cited from men of all ages, lack of personal acceptance, meaning being uncomfortable with their sexuality, being comfortable with how they're perceived by society because of their sexuality. This is something that weighed heavily on their minds, particularly of the ones that were surveyed in this group. The researchers also know that gay men of all ages may have ongoing issues in their personal development that makes them susceptible to suicide. So, lack of acceptance, presence of mental health issues, specifically depression and anxiety, these are things that may lead to the gay male population considering suicide. And 1 in 6 is a higher rate than the normal general population. So that is definitely shown up in a factor as far as those who are admitting that they consider suicide as a way to finally take care of a problem that they feel will never get fixed. So it is a big problem in this specific population, and we'll also talk about how it's a problem in other specific populations as well. The next population we want to talk about is middle-aged veterans. Suicide rates among veterans is higher than the general population. This is from all ages of veterans, whether it's someone who just started the Army, just out of high school, in early adulthood, to middle age, and even to older veterans as well. This picture right here is just a general idea of the things that a veteran might consider as a method of taking his own life, whether it be with alcohol, with drugs, or with firearms. Those are many of the common methods used by veterans if they're considering suicide. So it's a high risk both with disabled veterans and non-disabled veterans. And this is just a brief graphic explaining how those specifically from Iraq and Afghanistan, active duty, attempted suicide or committed suicide, those actually injured are over twice as likely as opposed to who came back with in normal physical condition from active duty. So it's something that's definitely weighs heavily on both veterans that are able-bodied when they come back, which is still a higher rate than the general public, and specifically those who are injured as well. This is a short video of a younger veteran, but it also reflects some of the issues that older veterans face as well, as far as dealing with the impact of war, dealing with the impact of their post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, and how it affects their daily lives and how they get to a point where they cannot see a way out.
The website Gawker has published the suicide note of an Iraq War veteran who says he took his own life because the trauma of war left him in constant mental and physical agony. Daniel Summers had been diagnosed with traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other conditions related to the war. He ran hundreds of combat missions as a machine gunner and carried out interrogations as part of an intelligence team in Baghdad. Later, he worked with JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command, as a senior analyst in Mosul. In a letter first quoted by the Phoenix New Times and written to his family before he killed himself just over 2 weeks ago, Daniel Summers wrote, quote, "During my first deployment, I was made to participate in things the enormity of which is hard to describe. War crimes, crimes against humanity. Though I did not participate willingly and made what I thought was my best effort to stop these events, there are some things that a person simply cannot come back from. I take some pride in that, actually, as to move on in life after being part of such a thing would be the mark of a sociopath in my mind. These things go far beyond what most are even aware of. To force me to do these things and then participate in the ensuing cover-up is more than any government has the right to demand. Then the same government has turned around and abandoned me," he wrote. He went on to say, "Any blame rests with them." Daniel Summers killed himself on June 10th. He was 30 years old.
So, from hearing from one veteran's perspective that actually unfortunately went through with going through suicide, there are significant factors that weigh heavily on the minds of our soldiers when they come back from war. Middle-aged veterans are actually more at risk than younger veterans. Veterans that take their lives are often those that have been retired from active duty for a while and are often overlooked in regards to intervention and prevention programs. So not only are they dealing with the mental trauma of war, they're also facing the general circumstances of becoming middle-aged. And sometimes the combination of those two things are enough to lead a person to fully commit to taking their own lives. This is small pie graph here shows at the time of suicide, 69% of the veterans that take their lives were age 50 or older. What's interesting as well is not only age being a factor in a veteran taking his life, but actually where the veteran lives plays a big role as well. If you look at this chart right here, if a veteran is living in Alaska or the upper Northwest, in the states of Washington and Idaho, also in the lower Midwest, in the states of Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, and also the lower southeast states of Alabama, Florida. Those have suicide rates in veterans almost twice of the general population of regular veterans taking their suicide, just specifically in those regions. Um, they're not sure exactly why that is the case, whether it be lack of resources available to veterans. That might play a big role, but also um, it's also known that those veterans in those areas also are in areas also where other societal factors are factoring in as well. A lot of the states have lower job rates and things like that. So in general, population in those states have a higher rate as well, but particularly with veterans. Here's a short video put out by the U.S. Army um, helping people understand the impact that suicide prevention can help in a specific population. Just a second here.
Life is just too much. I just wish it was over.
I know things are hard for you right now. Are you thinking of committing suicide?
Yes, I am. Suicide feels like the only way to end my pain.
What about your family? How do you think they would feel?
They'll be fine. Everyone will be better off without me.
You said you wanted to spend your 15th anniversary with your wife. You wanted to walk your daughter down the aisle and teach your son football.
I still want those things. I feel so lost.
I understand, but none of that can happen if you're not around.
I know. I need help.
Well, let's get the help you need, and you can someday have the life you want.
I guess there are things worth living for.
So that gives you an idea of interventions that the military is taking in place to help people be more aware of veterans in that particular situation. Just finishing up with a couple more risk factors of note. When looking at the rate of suicide of men of middle age, there are certain statistics that are noticeable risk factors. In regards to ethnicity, the highest increase was among American Indian and Alaskan natives. And as you saw with the graphic a couple slides ago, Alaska, specifically with veterans, has one of the higher rates of veteran suicide. Being in that region, a lot of areas in the American Indian population have a lot of societal problems, lack of jobs, higher rates of obesity and diabetes are also major health problems, and alcoholism in those populations are high as well. As the doctor mentioned in our first video, there was also a significant increase of suicide among whites in this particular age group. A 40.4 increase, up from 15.9 per 100,000 people to 22.3 per 100,000 people. And it's worth noting the ways that men are committing suicide. There was an increase in suffocation, but also an increase in poisoning, and use of firearms, especially among veterans, is being the most prevalent method of all. Finally, talking about social work implications, like the doctor mentioned in the previous video, a lot of men in this age don't seek medical help in general, let alone mental help. The risk of suicide in middle-aged males is a problem. It's not as well known as others, such as teenage pregnancy or drug use among teens. This is a population that rarely seeks help and may refuse help as a deference to their obligations to family work. They may put off putting to the doctor so they don't miss a day at work, for example. An opportunity for intervention for social work would be via medical referral. Because this population is likely to see their doctor for medical help, something serious enough to go to the doctor, the physician can refer the patient towards social work intervention, such as raising for therapy, or if serious enough, even admission for psychiatric evaluation. Here are some references for articles that were cited, and a couple of the videos that were used as well. Thank you for your time, and I hope this helped you understand the problem of middle-aged male suicide much better. Thank you.